But check this out. Well, this was the reason I bought this whole bag, was I found another one of these. A rust monster. Just yesterday, I was just talking about it, and then I go to the thrift store, and there's a bag with one in it. Now, I paid $4.99 for that bag, which is really expensive because I don't really need any of these other monsters. Animals, rather. But I needed this. But it wasn't until I opened the bag and I got home is that he's missing a leg. I didn't notice that until then, and now I paid $5 basically for this guy because I didn't care about any of that. He's missing a leg. Damn it. I mean, I'm not going to sculpt him a new leg. I'm just going to, if I want to use him in my D&D game, I'm just throwing him on the board. And I guess if I display him on the shelf or something, I could just display him facing that way, so that's fine. Okay, whatever. $5, man. Look at how sweet that is. I have yet to compare it to my other one, but I'm sure it's a slightly different paint job, I know that. And the other one I have, I think, is a little bit smaller. So, I don't know. I'll have to figure that out. Okay, so look, I dug out my other rust monster. And he is way smaller than the one I just got. Way smaller and has no antenna. No feelers. But they have the exact same tail. Same like bumpy back. Same kind of feet. And this one's missing a leg, of course. The big one. But, hey. Well, maybe this is a gargantuan rust monster in D&D 5e. I mean, I could just juice up his stats, right? Do some homebrew. And then the other one would just be a normal rust monster. This guy's like the alpha rust monster. He's totally all about the metal. Because that's what rust monsters do, right? They eat metal, or they corrode metal and then eat the rust. Yeah, they're weird, dumb kind of creatures, actually. But, yeah, now I got two of them. Vintage, classic, predate D&D. In case I haven't mentioned this before, I think they were actually part of the set that inspired some of the monsters in the game. Yeah, it came from Japan, I believe, and I mean, that's messed up. Okay, so the earliest example of a rust monster I could find was in this. This is the 1978 version of Dungeons and Dragons rules. So, okay, maybe this isn't the definitive earliest version, but it is probably the simplest version of the rust monster that I could find. Now, let's take a look. I've got the page back here somewhere. There we go. Okay. Rust monster moves 120 feet a turn in alignment neutral. Continued on next page. Has 5 hit dice. Maxes out at about 40 hit points. Now, AC of 2. Inoffensive little creature. The bane of anyone wearing metal. Hits by a rust monster or hits delivered to one. Cause armor and weapons, even magic weapons, to rust instantaneously. Is fast and attracted by the smell of metal. Eats the rust and corroded metal created by its anti-metallic attack. Now, that middle sentence, or rather the second sentence, is quite significant here. Hits by a rust monster or delivered to one cause armor and weapons, even magic weapons, to rust instantaneously. Now, that's important because that changes in later editions. It was 1978, the blue box, and here's the box. It goes in there. 1978. Now, also dated 1978, or at least I believe my copy is dated 1978, is the Advanced D&D Monster Manual. Yeah, there we go. 1978. But written 77, perhaps? So maybe this predates the previous one. But let's look at the Rust Monster in here. Rust Monster. He's still got an AC of 2. He moves 18 inches now. It's expressed in inches, like tabletop scale, I guess. I never quite understood that. The movement in AD&D is kind of all over the place. Anyway, 5 hit dice. Damage per attack, nil. Special defense is nil. But it does have, you know, it's basically the same. However, what it does do in here is it doesn't say that, like it says here that magic weapons and armor actually get a chance to save versus being affected by the rust. Now, what it does is like every plus of the magic weapon or armor gives it a 10% chance. So if you have a +2 sword, you have a 20% chance of making the saving throw. So that the, let's say +2 sword, so the sword doesn't rust away and is useless. Now, that gives you a chance to save. So that's good. But even that's going to change in the future. Now, I'm not sure if this one comes first or if the blue book comes first, but I like this better. And I also really like the picture. That is your classic rust monster right there. Moving a little further ahead, we get to, this is my first exposure to not only to the rust monster, but to Dungeons and Dragons in general, is the basic rules. This was published 1980. Now, I had this back in 1980, and I freaking loved it. It's got all the rules in here. Anyway, I'm not going to do a review on the basic rules, but they're awesome. Let's look at the rust monster in here. Now, the rust monster gets a picture in here, but he has to share it with a pixie. See, the pixie fighting a rust monster. Well, the pixie's not using any metal, so he's probably going to do okay. Let's find rust monster. Rust monster, right there. AC of 2, hit dice of 5, move 120 feet. Now, that's the same as it was back in the blue book. Number of attacks 1, damage C below. And, yeah, this is basically the same, like it resolves the effects of the monster's rusting attack. It resolves it exactly the same way as in the first edition AD&D Monster Manual. So it hasn't really changed that much from AD&D, other than the whole movement thing there. But of course it's a different game system than AD&D, a more simplified version, what have you. Now a couple of years later, let's see, what year is this one? Well, this is the other red book. I never owned this back in the day, or never played out of it, but a lot of people swear by this. I prefer the previous one, just because that was my first one. So I never really bothered to get this until a couple of years ago. Rust Monster doesn't get a picture in this edition. Let's see if anything's changed. Nope. Armor class 2, hit dice 5. It's got an asterisk though, so I don't know what that means. I think it means, I don't know what that means. Armor class of 2, hit dice of 5, movement 120. That's all the same. Then we go to 2nd edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, which doesn't say 2nd edition anywhere on here. So this is actually like the second version of the 2nd edition, if that makes any sense. Now let's find the rust monster in here. I know he's in there. Okay, rust monster gets a full page. Full page. Let's check them basic stats. AC 2, hit dice 5. Let's see what else is maybe different. Movement 18. So again, this is being Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, goes with the inches of movement. Okay, then it looks to me like combat is pretty much the same. So yeah, because it expresses that 20% chance if you have a +2, etc. And it has a little bit more details. And also talks about like the behavior of the monster. Goes deep into the description. It looks a little more insectoid than it did before, but I think it's fitting and I think it's cool. So it starts to look more like what your 5th edition Rust monster would look like. I don't know, it's kind of gnarly looking. I wouldn't want to fight that. But again, you're wielding a metal sword. You hit the Rust monster, boom, your weapon's done. If it's a magical metal sword, well, there's a chance that it's not done. But it's just a chance, right? It's not automatic. Monster manual for the Dungeons & Dragons 3rd edition, when they dropped the advanced. Let's see. Rust monster gets, he gets a cool picture. And it looks like it's kind of blended, embracing that more insectoid quality. Let's see about its stats. Now, the rules of the game changed a good bit for 3rd edition. Not too much, but they did change. Now, we have hit dice 5d8 plus 5. So it gets a little bit of a bonus, and it gives you an average there. Speed of 40 feet. So it goes back to the feet. Okay, and now the armor classes have changed, so it's got a AC of 18, which kind of makes sense because, I mean, given the way that the game plays now, the higher the number, the better the defense. Harder it is to hit. It actually can do like a bite attack now that actually does some damage, so they did change that. It still does the rusting attack. And let's see. Yeah, okay. Now here it says, most fighters would rather face an army of orcs than confront a rust monster. Now, I think it gives you a basic save for any type of... Oh, here we go. It changes it a little bit. It doesn't go by the plus bonus of the weapon or armor. But magical weapons and armor now get to make a DC 20 reflex save. So that's kind of cool. It hits your magic weapon, or you hit it with a magic weapon, you get a flat save on that. Then we get to 4th edition, where they actually shoved it into the Monster Manual 2, because they didn't put them in the original Monster Manual, which I think was a disservice. And to be quite honest, I don't care for 4th edition really at all. There's some cool ideas, but the actual mechanics of the game just were baffling to me. Baffling and pointlessly complicated in some points. Here's a picture. There's your rust monster. Looks kind of insect. He's eating a breastplate there. Num num. Now it splits it. It gives it a full page. Oh, and actually 2 pages. 2-page spread on. But it's got like special subspecies of rust monster. Then it's got your standard rust monster here. It's got a swarm of young rust monsters, and then a Dwemer, or however you say that, Dwemer reader, which I guess is a special type. I don't care about that. I just want my straight up rust monster. Let's see what he gets here. So hit points of 66. I don't know, sure, that sounds good. AC of 20. So he's got more hit points, better armor class, but I'm not even sure how that stacks up with the rest of these like crazy rules changes that came about. So it has like different powers that it can use. And most of this is confusing and stupid, and I don't even want to go through it to really figure out exactly how this works. but it does say that it's like the rusting metal touch, kind of like it just reduces your armor class by 1. It's starting to eat your armor. Anyway, it seems like a lot of bookkeeping for this stuff. And it just has to land a hit. And it's like it slowly eats your armor away while you're fighting it. And let's be honest, even with 66 hit points in 4th edition, that rust monster's going to be off the board in like 3 rounds of combat, probably. Now we get to the 5th edition rust monster. It's in a page protector because I ripped up my monster manual. Okay, the picture's pretty cool. Looks like a rust monster, I think. Face is a little small. I kind of like it with bigger, ghoulier eyes. Now, this is in 5th edition terms. AC 14. It's pretty low. First level cleric has a better AC than that. First level rogue generally has a better AC than that. It has 27 hit points, or an average. 5d8 plus 5. That harkens back to earlier editions. Speed of 40, slightly faster than your average character. Unimpressive stats. I mean, that AC 14, this thing's going to get hit like tons of times. And this specifies any non-magical weapon that hits the rust monster corrodes. After dealing damage, the weapon takes a permanent and cumulative -1 penalty to damage rolls. If this penalty drops to -5, it's destroyed. So that means that you have to hit the rust monster 5 times, or that you can only hit it 5 times before your weapon rusts away. And meanwhile, you're doing less and less damage. Well, that's all fine and good for non-magical weapons, and it tells you the same with non-magical ammunition. So basically, there is no bonus, save, or anything like that for magic weapons. First of all, it takes a long-ass time for the rust monster to actually do anything to you. 5 rounds? Like, really? Yeah, okay. Now, it takes 5 rounds for the rust monster to, like, take one piece of equipment out. And that's by you hitting it or it hitting you. So, okay, well, maybe that's only 2 rounds then. But that's all well and good. Where does it say anything about magical weapons and armor? Nowhere, because they are unaffected. I think that is totally stupid. This monster, and they give it a really low challenge rating because it is no challenge at all. You could throw 3 of these guys at a first level party, and all that's really going to do is it's going to make one fighter have to go buy a new sword. You know? Or you just give him a magical one by the end of the adventure or whatever. If you have magic weapons, forget about it. This thing is toast. Like, what? It's just dead weight. Might as well be a tree or, you know, something you push out of the way to get to the adventure. Remember the paragraph in an earlier edition where it said that, you know, fighters would rather face an army of orcs than a rust monster. Ooh. Yeah, I mean, that was exaggerating a bit even back then, but now, this thing is just a joke. It's ridiculous. Now, you can see why I wouldn't want to use this guy in 5th edition. It's ridiculous. It's really ridiculously bad. Now, back in the day, though, back in, like, basic D&D, that was cool. Yeah, so I've never actually used a rust monster in any of my D&D games. I don't know why. Maybe I just thought it was kind of goofy. Maybe I thought it was a little too dangerous for the PCs. Now I'm talking earlier editions, because now it's a freaking joke.
But I'll tell you, if I ever do put a rust monster in any of my D&D games, it's going to be a hell of a lot tougher than the ridiculous 5th edition version. Of course, I still play with 5th edition rules, but I am going to definitely change some stats for said rust monster, and I'm going to get rid of that whole magic items are immune to the rusting effect, because it's D&D 5th edition. Everybody's got so many magic items and powers, and like with 27 hit points that they give this thing, your average party of 3 characters is going to just eat through this thing in about 2 rounds maximum. There's no way that anybody's going to really suffer any permanent lingering effects, because it doesn't actually, well, I guess it can do some damage. It does get a D8 plus 1, I think. D8 plus 1 piercing damage for a bite. Okay, alright, so he's got that. But the whole rusting thing, like, why even call it a rust monster? Because it's not going to rust anything. It's ridiculous. And it's done in that incremental, ooh, every time it hits, it's a -1, it's a -1, it's a -1. That's stupid. It should be one hit, boom, it's magic, man. It's a magical creature, obviously. So, it should be able to affect magical items. Anyway, rust monsters are cool, I think. I think they look neat. I think they can be a lot scarier than their stats make them out to be, if you put a little imagination into it. So here, this was my video tribute to the rust monster. He's so cute.